Hi, my name is Tammy,
And I'm Jen.
and they call us Woo. Hi, everyone. Before we get into it, just a quick note that we will be discussing briefly a few topics that are sensitive today when we're having a conversation about soul contracts. These topics include concentration camps, abuse, and dissociative identity disorder. The intention behind the conversation is not to lessen any real trauma or pain that anyone has experienced surrounding this, and our hearts and support go out to you if you have experienced any trauma surrounding this. It's just a conversation about the things that could be happening at the soul level and different perspective regarding that. So we hope that you're able to join us to listen to the rest of the podcast. And if you have any questions or comments, please let us know. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Today, we're actually going to be talking about something that we brought up in a previous recording when we were talking about Akashic Records. We wanted to talk a little bit more about soul contracts and then walk-ins, which is something I had never heard about until Jen mentioned it, and I'm really curious about that. But soul contracts is something that I think maybe some people know about it, but I think it's actually a little less well known, I guess you could say, outside of the woo community. Maybe something people haven't heard about as much.
Mhm.
But do you want to just start out with a basic explanation of what a soul contract is?
Yes. So a soul contract is a contract that we create with other souls before we populate down into our current bodies, into our current vessel. So when we're preparing to step into a certain lifetime or a certain incarnation, we partner with other souls. We talk about the lessons that we want to learn, the experiences we want to have, and we make agreements with other people. Hey, will you help me learn this specific thing or help me experience this specific thing? And you write up essentially a contract and say, hey, if you help me with this, I'm going to help you with this. Um, and from there, when you come into these bodies, there's timelines where people are going to meet each other or they find ways to connect with each other in this lifetime so that they can fulfill those contracts. So that's
That's
what
a
that is.
very fascinating take on all of that, especially because I think there's a lot of different elements of different religions and belief systems that kind of like skirt around that but don't maybe necessarily call it that. Like there's a lot of people who
Mhm.
believe that your soul was already alive before your body was alive and it comes from heaven or whatever. And there's people who believe in reincarnation and all that other fun stuff that it's interesting to think of it that way because it also gives a little bit different perspective to the people that affect you negatively in your life. And
Yes.
it's certainly not saying that anybody, especially, people who have been victims of abuse and stuff like that, like nobody wants that to happen, right? Like nobody is looking at that and
Mm-mm.
being like, yeah, this is a great thing to happen to the person. But also, when you're talking about in the sense of yourself, as you learn more, it makes you question, like, okay, what was I supposed to do with this?
Yep.
Because sitting with it for the rest of my life and being miserable is probably not what I was supposed to do with it.
Hmm.
But also it's kind of interesting to me too because then it's like it also gives you permission for, okay, what if I do sit with it for the rest of my life, or I then become a perpetrator of the same abuse or things like that. Also the idea that we have more opportunities to keep learning, like this is not like, if you don't learn it in this lifetime, that's it.
Hmm.
You have more opportunities to continue making these contracts and working your way through things and learning what you need to learn. So eventually, at some point, you don't have to keep cycling through that process. And
Yeah.
to me, that's a very hopeful thing because I enjoy learning, and I think that's the main reason that we're here, right? Is to learn and grow. And the idea that, yeah, there's things I should figure out, but I have a lot of opportunities to figure that out.
Yeah.
makes me feel better, if that makes sense, you know,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
do think there's a limiting factor to the idea that this one life is it. That's all you get. And once it's done, it's done. Whatever you screwed up, it just is what it is, you
Yep.
know? Or
Yeah.
even the idea that maybe I have already learned what I needed to learn and I needed to be a catalyst for someone else to learn that too. I don't know. It kind of just gives you these endless options of like, oh, there's really interesting things at play
Yeah.
that could ultimately be beneficial.
So as you're talking, I have a lot of chatter in my ear right now.
Okay.
So Wind Eagle is very,
I was
very
going to say, is
adamant.
it Wendigo? Hi.
He's very adamant that I address this
Mm-hmm.
because I said when I was talking about us learning and experiencing, and he always talks to me about how everybody has this notion that we're here because we have to learn these things. We have to gain all this knowledge and we have to learn what we're doing wrong and
Mm-hmm.
correct it. And that's not what it is at all. Like, we're simply here to experience. Our soul knows everything. We have all of the knowledge right there in our soul. We have all of the knowledge. We are simply here to experience it in physical form because souls don't have bodies. And so it's a completely different experience when you know something and then when you experience it. It's
Mm-hmm.
hands-on learning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's hands-on experience is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so like he keeps coming in and he's like, "Nope, you need to correct this notion because it has nothing to do with learning. It has everything to do with experiencing. You
Mm-hmm.
are here to experience, not to learn. You already know everything. You just need to remember what you learned."
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So
Yeah, that's a
he's
whole
being
different
very
spin on it.
adamant. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm bringing that forward. The other thing I was going to bring up was a lot of people have a hard time with the souls getting together before they come down onto this earth and talking about things and planning things out. I've had some people who've kind of gotten a little bit combative with me about
Mm-hmm.
it. They're like, no, no, no. God's the one who chooses everything that happens, and everything's laid out by God. We have this specific plan that God has put in place for us. And my understanding, um, everybody that I've talked to has said that our source, God, whatever you're going to call that being, that entity, um, has created our life so that we can expand, so that we can stand in a loving state. And we have free will and we have the opportunity to create experiences so that we can fully embrace who we are as loving beings. So it's like we've been created in this loving space, and then we get to do with it what we will. Um, that's my understanding. Everybody can have their own beliefs. But from what I've seen and what I've witnessed, because sometimes when I go into past life stuff, sometimes when I go into the Akashic records, sometimes when I'm just working with people on the table, I get very clear images of what has happened at a soul level before they arrived on this planet. And
Mm-hmm.
every once in a while, I'll be brought into this lovely room that just has this big screen up there, and they're going through situations. And so it will be this soul and this soul. They're on the screen in different bodies, and they're like, nope, I don't want to be in that body in this lifetime. Let's put a different body in there. And so they play the movie out for them so they can see exactly what's happening, how they're going to work through that. And then it's like this specific part of the situation is already set up, and then we have free will to work around that situation. So it's like, um one of the examples I'll give is at a soul level, somebody can opt to get cancer while they're in their physical body, and their soul contract might be with the nurse who's going to care for them. That
Mm-hmm.
nurse needs to learn or needs to experience caring for somebody else, and the person who has cancer might need to experience what it's like to be cared for fully.
Mm-hmm.
They might need to experience what it's like to not be capable of doing all of the things that they've been able to do in other lifetimes. So it's like that's their contract. It's like, I'm going to care for you so that you can experience what it's like to be cared for, and I'm gaining the experience of caring for somebody else. So they might be in that situation in this lifetime, and then they might choose in another incarnation to switch it up. They might choose to flip roles, or they might choose to be the nurse is now the significant other of the person who is going through cancer. So they can experience that whole situation from a different light. So it's looking at different perspectives so that we can be more compassionate and caring and loving to the other pieces of the whole.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody else who's around us. We've all had different experiences. We've all experienced things from different perspectives and different lifetimes. And because of that, we can bring ourselves to the table differently when we see that playing out in front of us
Sure.
in this lifetime.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. It's kind of like what we were talking about last time, too. Or one of the times, this new soul, old soul thing, and
Mm-hmm.
how new souls tend to be more selfish, more, they haven't
Mm-hmm.
experienced all of the things yet. So that totally makes sense that this is an opportunity to experience and grow from that. Um, and I guess I do like the other perspective of experiencing versus learning. I think the reason that the idea of learning appeals so much to me is I'm a total nerd that would go to school for fun, and I
Not me.
just enjoy it depends. It depends what it's about, because I'm not quite the same type of nerd as my husband, who could watch like millions of hours of YouTube about every nuance detail of everything. And I can't do that. I like the hands-on learning, but I do love
Yep.
learning, and
Yeah.
I feel like expanding my mind, just it does nothing but good in my mind, because I know there's a saying of like ignorance is bliss. I'm not talking about like looking through the internet and seeing every terrible story out there.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about actually like learning about how things work, learning about how everything is connected together. There's just simple things, learning about nature, learning about whatever it might be.
Yeah.
um it always brings a good feeling to me, and I guess I like the idea of also reminding myself that in order to not to get stuck in just the learning piece of it, the experiencing is important, because then it's not this desire to um, ignore or not address
Yeah.
the situations that don't feel good too,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's generally speaking, those are the ones we tend to learn a lot from, whether
Yep.
it be just ways that we want to shift stuff, or just, like how to treat other people, how to treat ourselves. It
Yeah.
it is an interesting perspective to look at. I'm going to go back to that Swedish death cleaning show too, because another thing that I thought was super interesting about that is they talk in there about how uncomfortable Americans are with talking about negative things,
Yep.
death being a huge one, like how their culture is very open with stuff like that. So doing this death cleaning isn't like oh my god, you're talking about someone dying. It's like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, we're all going to die at some point. This is just talking about how we want to
Speak for
live.
yourself. I'm gonna live here forever.
Do you really want to?
No.
No. But it's a kind of an interesting take on it, because it also does remind me that, yeah, if you get kind of caught up in this idea that everything needs to be as comfortable as possible all the time,
Yeah.
you are not experiencing everything that you want to or need to experience. And it kind of makes sense. You think of people who have been born into lives where maybe they have a lot of wealth or something like that. Oftentimes you find a lot of like thrill seeking behaviors, or maybe sometimes more dangerous behaviors, because they want something that feels different. And it's
Yeah.
almost like this craving for a learning experience, or an experience outside of comfort,
Yeah. Yeah.
which totally makes
Um,
sense.
so I had an experience a while ago. I was taking a class that was specifically about soul contracts, and we had several people in the room, and then there was one person who was calling in because she was out of state. And the teacher was talking about how sometimes we create these contracts where people are doing really awful things to somebody else. And at a soul level, everybody knows what's happening. Everybody knows like why that's happening. And it is creating a victim perpetrator situation in the physical realm. In the
Mm-hmm.
soul realm, it's a partnership. And so the instructor was talking about this and brought up um, uh, Auschwitz and brought up concentration camps and Hitler and started talking about how situations like that, we don't always think about it from the human perspective as something that could be bringing something else into the world that is needed so that people can experience different aspects of being. And he was making this point in this class, and the woman who was calling in um, got very, very upset.
Mm-hmm.
Like super, super upset
Yeah, like I felt
because,
myself getting a little like, oh, that's a really
yeah,
hard thing to hear.
it is. And she had family who were in concentration camps. And she was very angry at him for even bringing that topic to the table and saying that there could be something good that came from that. And and I learned a lot in that moment because we don't know what anything's for. Like in and from a spiritual, from a psychic perspective, like sometimes you bring information to the table, higher information that you're getting from source, you're getting from your guides, you're getting to deliver to people so they understand at a different level. And sometimes it's really hard for us to hear for the exact reason you said. We don't like to be uncomfortable. It's really hard for us to stay in that space. It's really hard for us to see that there might be something bigger outside of us that knows how this is going to affect us or knows that we're coming back into balance through these experiences. And in that moment, I realized it's something that when you deliver the information, you need to just deliver the information and say, this is the information I'm receiving. This is the information that I am meant to share in this moment and allow people to experience the emotions that they're going to have, because that is also part of the contract that we're here to have. So, those of us who are delivering the information, those of us who people are coming to us saying, hey, can you tap into this energy and tell us what's going on? They're expecting you to tell them the truth. They're expecting you to give them the information that they might not want to hear. You've said it yourself. Sometimes it's not what I wanted to hear, but it's what I
Mm-hmm.
needed in that moment. And like that was a very in my face reminder of that. Like I'm just here to deliver information that people are meant to hear. And regardless of if they're angry at me or they're upset about the information that came through, like their experience is valid and they're meant to experience what it is in that moment that came forward.
Mm-hmm.
So, that is a huge part of the soul contract is we're asked to do things at a soul level that we might not really want to do because we understand that it's going to be perceived as horrible here, but we're doing it out of love and we're doing it so that we can support the growth and the experience of another soul who is in our soul group. Um, so like that's a huge bite to take right now, but like a lot
Well,
of the time that's what it is.
and for clarity too, I mean, nobody, no loving or caring person is wants something like that to happen to someone else. We're uncomfortable for a reason. That was terrible, and this is not condoning or saying that
Oh no.
this wasn't wrong,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
do this to other people, as much as understanding that this was terrible, but also this could there could be something behind the scenes that you don't understand. So doing what you can with the information that you have.
Mhm.
So in my mind, it would be like being a person who was advocating for or protecting the Jewish people, understanding that, yeah, this is freaking terrible, but maybe this is my opportunity to come forward and be like, I'm not going to participate in this. I'm going to be a stronger person than this. I'm going to be a stronger person than the crowd, and I'm going to say, hell no. I'm going to protect people. Viewing it from that perspective of pushing people to be their best selves when they can be their best selves could be a really powerful thing too. Or, like when we think of other really heavy things that have happened, how oftentimes when something really terrible like that happens, nobody is condoning it happening, but sometimes the best of people come out after that, when people who wouldn't have otherwise supported each other in that way are now supporting each other in ways because you've just gotten down to the base level of humanity, really. Of like, that was really terrible. Let me be an advocate and an ally for you versus, or, let's come together as a community and rebuild. It's kind of like all the things that happened after the horrible George Floyd incident. It was like palpable pain, right? That was happening throughout the community. Things were burning down because it was a very visceral, like visual representation of the horrible pain people were going through at the time. And we saw a lot of that, and it hurt. But also the way that the community tried to get together and, not only support each other, but try to make some type of noticeable change. And continue to try to make a noticeable change. Is an outcome that we would all hope for, right? And I hope that our country and the world can continue moving in that direction. I mean, I know ultimately we're all going back, right? We all have these contracts. We're all going back, and we're doing reboots as needed. But I hope that people who are listening to this understand that, like, honestly, I got a very, like, intense response to that too, because that is a hard thing to put in its place. But also I am, from a family, I have people who are very close to me that have been through very severe abuse. And there's information that you have shared with us, as well as conversations that we've had, where, interestingly enough, now that there's been, a lot of therapy, a lot of personal growth at trying to pull themselves out of it, they see it from a different perspective now, where of course it still hurts, therapy doesn't make it go away, just helps you get through it, right? But now they're seeing themselves as a way to break this cycle that was quite possibly a generations long cycle. So viewing it as a point of strength, where they're like, that was terrible that happened, but there's only so many times I can re-experience how terrible that happened to me, and then realize I don't want to do that to anybody else. So now they have this kind of view of, like, being able to appreciate how strong they are. Sorry, I think I have cat hair in my mouth.
Stop licking your cat.
Oh, come on. Have you seen those, like, brush tongue things?
Yes.
Ugh.
Yes.
Anyway.
So strange. Although I kind of want one of them just because I want to see what it's like, but
just out of sheer curiosity.
It's weird. Yeah, just out of sheer curiosity, and like how my cats would respond. I feel like they would, like, bite it and rip it out of my mouth and be like, "What are really you doing, confused? You weird lady?"
Yes.
Yeah, like, get that weird giant tongue away from me. Any woozy woozy.
Now I know what to get you for a gift. But as, like, a little comedy break from the intense subject, I guess if you had said the same thing to me, 10 years ago, my response would have been even more intense, because it really freaking sucks to see someone be hurt like that. And it really sucks to see people being cruel to other people for no reason. But then being able to identify that if they are able to bring themselves to a point of clarity and healing, that there's something that beautiful that could come out of that.
Yeah.
And we don't know what their contract was before.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
before they came to the world.
You know me well enough to know that I'm probably the first person who will start bawling her face off when
absolutely.
she sees somebody being treated poorly.
And you're a bug saver like me. No, I get it.
Yeah. It's one of those things that's like been the hardest lesson for me to learn with receiving information, because it's like my heart breaks when I see things like that happen. My heart breaks. Like, even talking about it, I'm like, okay, don't cry. But I also see the other side of it, and I'm like, okay, I gotta find balance in this somewhere. Like I can still be a human being. I can still feel my emotions. I can still like reach out and try to stop whatever it is that's happening. Like, it's calling me to do something. It's calling other people around the situation to do something and step into a different experience. But I'm also called to know that there's more going on in the situation. That doesn't change how I respond as a human being. That just allows me to experience both, and it allows me to experience the soul perspective, the higher perspective of things, as well as stay in my human lane and do the human things that are being asked of me.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead and finish what you were going to say.
Well, I was going to bring up the topic of karmic debt too, but I want to know what you were going to say.
I was just going to ask then, so then, I mean, we can't just assume that every bad thing that happens to someone is someone else's soul contract with them then, correct? Sometimes, isn't it also just this person has the free will to make choices, and they've decided to do something that was harmful versus good? Like, we can't assume that every situation is like that, or
I wouldn't say we can. I don't think we can assume anything. There are definitely a lot of situations out there that we would hope weren't soul contracts that probably are. But a lot of the major things, my experience and the information I've received, a lot of the experiences that are the worst experiences we see are things that were planned by our soul so that we could experience. A lot of the time, the smaller things that are happening, the like nitpicky things and the fights and the things like that, those are things that we consciously choose with our free will. Usually the bigger things, though, are something that a group of souls got together and said, you know what, this might suck, but I want to experience this aspect of this, and I know you want to experience this. And so, like, I hate to say it, but like everything that I've seen is most of the bigger experiences were contracts that large groups of souls made together.
So part of that would probably tie into the generational trauma thing too, right? Like, maybe some of this is generations long things that these souls have been experiencing, and they're trying to find a way out, kind of, or they're trying to find a different perspective or a different experience so they can come out of it with a different viewpoint.
Yeah, so generational trauma is an interesting thing that, like, we could really dive into, but I will just say, like, from a soul level, like, a lot of the time we will step back into a family cycle. Like, so you might have your great 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 grandpa who stepped back into the family line years and years and years and years later, like in a different human form. So, like, you're bringing that trauma from the last time he was in the family as a soul, like, you're bringing that trauma back around. So that's one aspect of generational trauma, where you have a soul who is just stepping back into the family in a different role. And most of the time that's to gain new perspective on something that has happened within the family lineage or within that soul lineage. I will bring in the karmic debt thing now because it does make sense. So from a soul perspective, a lot of people think of karma as you did something bad and you're going to be punished for it, or you did something really good and now like everybody loves you on the other side and you're a saint. That's not the way it works. So karmic debt is really just currency. It's like
Mm.
I want to experience this thing. So I'm going to pay for it by doing this thing for this other soul. And now I have $10 of karma in my bank account.
Mm.
And then I go and somebody else does something for me and I pay them with karma. Like all it is
It's like
currency.
Bitcoin.
Yes. Yes, it's energetic Bitcoin. But that's really what it is. It's the karma cycle has nothing to do with good or bad, positive, negative. It has everything to do with I gifted you this experience. Now I'm being gifted this experience.
Okay.
And so it's literally like I get $1 for every experience I help you with. Oh, and that one's worth 10. Like, you know? So
Interesting.
it's really not like you have negative karma. It's just you have to fulfill a few more contracts in order to gain that currency back.
Mm-hmm.
So, like the people who are out there going, karma's a bitch, it's gonna get you. Oh, I shouldn't have said that word. Sorry, guys. But
I might be able to fix it in editing. We'll see. But I think we're allowed a couple
hopefully,
of them as long as they're
crap.
not in like the
Sorry, you
first
guys.
minute now or
But
something weird.
but you know what I mean? Like people are like, this is karma, and karma's gonna come back and get you.
Hmm.
And that's not the way that it works. It's really just a currency. It's a cycle of give and take. Um, it's like I've talked about before, there's really no positive and negative. It's our perception of those things. It's the
Hmm.
same thing with karma. It's our perception of like this is a good experience, this is a bad experience. I did this thing and this person did this thing. It's give and take.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. Then you also brought up walk-ins, which I know I brought up
Yeah.
in a previous show. And
That blew my mind. Please talk more about that. I'm like, what?
yeah, we're not talking about walking in for a haircut. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about soul walk-ins. So one of the things that a soul contract can include is walk-ins. So if there is an experience that someone has agreed to have in a body, a lot of the time they will create an end point for that soul to exit. So like there have been a lot of stories about people who have a heart attack and they essentially die. They flatline in the hospital and they come back and they're this completely different person. Now they're into art and they can speak different languages and like there's things that are easier for them. That is typically a walk-in. It's not that a part of their brain died and it opened up some other part of their brain. It's that that was an exit point for the soul that was there, and a new soul has decided to step in for the remainder of that person's lifetime in this human vessel
Crazy.
so that they can experience something else that they would have only been able to experience in that specific body. So
What?
when the lifetime is being planned out, these two souls will get together and say, hey, I want to experience this and I want to experience this. But that person is in the exact right place at the exact right time right here. Can I step in and take
Can
over
you
at that
tag me
point?
in?
Yeah, tag me in, bro. Um
What? This
like
is mind blowing to me.
yeah, so there's actually if you look it up online, there are so many different stories of people that they were in the hospital, they died in the hospital, and then they came out, and all of a sudden they can like paint like nobody's business, like beautiful artwork, or all of a sudden can play the piano beautifully.
Hmm.
And it's crazy when you hear those stories, and it's like, well, that couldn't just be because a part of the brain died and something else opened up. Like, there's no way that somebody who'd never put their fingers on a piano before can all of a sudden play like anything you put in front of them.
Wow.
Like, yeah, yeah, it's really crazy and
So
really cool.
how would you know? You wouldn't really, right? Because it'd be, I don't
Well,
know. Like how would you know that
so
you were swapped essentially?
so I have a couple of people that I've worked with in the past that have had that happen. Like as children, they died when they were children and like their life radically changed. Like radically changed. Like their organ function changed at that point. Like so many things changed in their system. Um, and when they got a little bit older, they started to recognize like some of them even had different memories.
What?
Like they remembered things that there's like there's no way that that happened in their life. Like no way that that happened in that human vessel.
Okay.
But they had different memories
Hmm.
because they were a soul who lived a life somewhere else and then like decided to step into a different body. So they were still carrying some of the old beliefs and some of the old thoughts and some of the old memories from this other lifetime that they were just in,
Mm-hmm.
and then transitioned into this one very quickly. And so some of those stories are interesting because
Wow.
it's like I remember things that my parents are like, there's no way, like that did not happen. Like that didn't happen at all. And it's not just like a, oh yeah, we went to the carnival and like this. It's like very detailed, like I had a wife
It's
and
not like my
I
husband
this
and
and I
daughter who like just listen to half what you're saying sometimes and fill in the blanks and make up their own
yeah.
stories.
Yes. No, it's not like that. It's like a whole lifetime. And oftentimes
Interesting.
it is like, especially the cases that I know, it was an adult soul. So somebody who was in the body of an adult, like left that body, went into the body of a child. And so it's like they went from being married with children to being a 4-year-old.
Okay.
And it's like all of a sudden this 4-year-old is saying, my wife, Susan, like just talking about all these things that had never mentioned before the
Wow.
experience, like just all of a sudden throwing those things out there. So so it's a really interesting topic. And we all hear the stories about near-death experiences where people walk into the light and they're greeted by different people and
Mm-hmm.
like we're so used to those stories that we don't even think about the people who like have those experiences and then they come back. Like they might actually be somebody else.
That's so
Like,
crazy.
and I mean, they talk about, okay, these are the experiences that I'm gonna have, but they don't know all the details when they come in. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they're just filling in the blanks and like um my understanding is that sometimes amnesia when people come back from situations like that is actually the soul trying to catch up on what actually happened in this lifetime now that they're walking into this life they need to figure out. So it's like quick study, figure out what's happening, and until they can study all the information and get the information their mind's blank. They have amnesia when
Wow.
they step in. So, so there are situations out there like that, that have happened. There's also situations, I'll bring up people who have multiple personalities. There's a lot of people who believe that multiple personalities can actually be multiple souls who are using the same body, and stepping in and out to have different experiences within this physical realm. Um, so like I know there's probably going to be some mental health professionals out there that are like, and no, that is not the case. But um it is a possibility. I mean,
Well,
I'm
and
going to
that's
leave
kind
my
of what
mind
we're
open to it.
talking about, right? Like,
Yep.
just because we talk about these things doesn't mean that it's the one right answer. It's
Yep.
just being open to the possibility that there's more than one way to look at something, or there could
Yep.
be different things happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
Interesting.
and I've spent a lot of time thinking about that one in particular because it's like if you've ever met somebody who has multiple personalities, they're a completely different person. Like mannerisms change, sometimes dietary preferences change, sometimes like one story that I heard about, the person was diabetic when they were one personality and they weren't in another personality. Like physical attributes change. And it's like, how does that just happen? Like, how does that just happen if it's not something else? And so I'm like, the whole soul switching in and out thing actually makes sense to me. Like it does.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on how you look at it, and I would imagine that it's possible to have more than one of those things be true, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Yep.
it's
Yeah.
not all just like it's this way or it's this way.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is some really interesting videos. I find myself going down rabbit holes in YouTube a lot when it comes to people's experiences. And lately I've been watching a lot of videos about different, just really nice, like kind of neutral interviews with people who have different mental health issues. And there was one I watched not that long ago, or a couple that I watched, where it was someone that was talking to someone with dissociative identity disorder,
Hmm.
which is what they call the split personality thing now.
Hmm.
And their description of their life and what it's like, and even from their description, they're completely like they don't know what's happening when the other one is forward. They
Yep.
had to get that information from other people to understand what was happening. But the one gal I was watching, she described it as a system of different parts of herself. But when I think about how she was describing things, I'm like, it's possible. It is certainly possible that it could have been, because it's very, like you said, very different people,
Hmm.
um, different ages, different genders, different everything. And they
Yeah.
don't necessarily always communicate with each other. But when, like, the main person, I guess, comes forward, she described being able to constantly like hear the other ones talking and stuff too. So it is kind of an interesting way to look at it, because I don't remember if she explained. I know a lot of the concept around it is that a lot of times it was a severe trauma that caused the personalities to split. That seems to be the common accepted notion. She didn't talk about that piece, so I have no idea what happened, but it sounded like it was coming from, this started at a very young age, where she would
Yeah.
lose like whole sections of time, and then people would tell her like, well, no, you said this to me, or you hit me and then you walked away. And she's like, what? No, I
Hmm.
didn't.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a fascinating thing to think that there's a possibility that that could be multiple souls too. That's, again, this is all just kind of a foreign concept to me, because
Yeah.
part of what I'm learning now is having an open mind to things that could have been very triggering for me before. So talking about like souls and angels and stuff like that, because of things that were very maybe not as positive from my perspective when I was younger, and different things that I learned. It's not until recently that I was even able to have conversations about stuff like this without, kind of closing my mind up a little bit. So
I'm glad you didn't meet me before.
I don't think I ever would have judged you harshly. I think that, yeah, there was things that I needed to work through about my own trauma through some of the things that I was taught, and now I feel a lot more comfortable being open to a lot of things. But you were actually a big catalyst in that too. I mean, some of the questions that I can ask you that I have had for a very long time, but nobody was ever able to just answer me, or it triggered them into being really, closed off about it or whatever else. that was huge for me to be able to just say, okay, so this is how I think things work. How do things actually work? Or ask really specific questions about like channeling or how
Mhm.
all that works. And you've always been open with me. So
Yeah.
that's, I think, helped me continue to open my mind too. And it's not like I think that I know all the things or all the answers. It's just curiosity
Hmm.
and being open to the idea that it could be possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, One of the things that came up when I was talking about the multiple different souls coming in
Mm-hmm.
was also the idea of like walk-ins that are low vibrational. So
Mm-hmm.
things that people would see as negative
Mm-hmm.
because that does happen. Not gonna lie, that does happen. Um, when people are in a state of drinking themselves silly, doing a lot of drugs, when they're in a really, really low space, a lot of the time the soul will walk out and other souls will walk in. Like, um, sometimes it's one of those things where we put ourselves into such a low vibration that we cannot hold our soul, not really hold our soul, but like our soul does not stay present anymore because we have brought ourselves
Like we're
to
kind of
such a low
starving our
vibration.
soul.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. And so like the soul will step out, or you kick the soul out. You're like, I'm done. Like I'm not doing this. Um, and it opens up the body for another soul to step in. It's kind of like when we talked about our clearing practices, when you clear all the stuff out, there's open space for something else to come in and fill that space. Um, and so a lot of the time, um, it's people who are in a really, really dark place. They're drinking a lot, they're doing a lot of drugs, and they can't keep anything that's of a higher vibration present for them. And it will open the body up to something else.
Okay.
So that is something else to look for. Like if you have somebody around you, people who get very, very abusive when they're drinking, or people who have completely different personalities when they're drinking or when they're doing drugs, sometimes that's the case, is that there's another soul who stepped in, that their experience has been one of violence or trauma and drama, and they'll fulfill that role. They'll fulfill that experience. Um, so watching for things like that, helping people get to a better spiritual place is a good thing if you know somebody who is in that situation. Um, but that's definitely something to watch for as well.
Sure. Yeah, that brings a whole different spin on it too. I know I've done a lot of reading and research about um, addictions and stuff like that too. And generally, the more successful approaches, which it's definitely not a one size fits all, but the
Mhm.
more successful approaches have been seeing the person for the person and not the addiction, right? Like their
Mhm.
addiction is not them, but
Yep.
trying to meet them kind of where they're at. Not saying it's perfect by any means. There's a lot that goes into addiction, but it does make sense then, like you said, bringing in some love. Obviously,
Mhm.
we're not going to open ourselves up to abusive situations. My
No.
personal version of love also requires a lot of honesty,
Mhm.
but there is cases too where people are able to overcome that and are able to, as you put it, really raise their vibration. So what a beautiful gift to give a soul who was in turmoil the
Mhm.
opportunity to actually learn some things, experience some things, shift
Yep.
some things. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Tammy, have you had any experience with soul contracts before?
No,
Like none?
I mean, other than
Not
just
that you know of.
randomly learning about them, I don't
Okay.
know of any in particular. I have, now that I learn more about it, I have a pretty distinct feeling that I have a very intense one with my husband and my daughter.
Yeah, yeah. Yes,
intense,
probably.
intense in ways where there's been a lot of challenges, but even in the way that my therapist, or well, our therapist, now their therapist, would describe things. She said once, and this really resonated with me, and I think this is part of my contract, that um, I was like my husband's monster hunter, because he didn't always, he was so locked up, he didn't always know how to identify, and it wasn't my job, nor did I make it my job to fight the monsters for him, but
Hmm.
it was like I was there shining a light, being like, there's a monster. And interestingly
Yeah.
enough, that was something that was a huge catalyst for him, and it had a lot to do with the way that we interacted when he was triggered and when he was really in his trauma, because he's got CPTSD, so complex PTSD, which generally comes from childhood abuse and trauma, and is on the spectrum as well. But the PTSD piece of it, you know, when if you, someone you love is in that, you probably will understand this very clearly, but they are not themselves when they're in the middle of it. They are themselves, but not the version that you normally know.
Yep.
And it's really hard to break through to them sometimes and get them to see things for what's really happening, because they're just stuck in this like really, really painful thing. So their defenses are up, and their defenses are generally saying a lot of things that aren't really what the rest of us are seeing are happening.
Yep.
But I guess the way that I've addressed that with him, which was very challenging, but did help him to be able to break through to the other side and see, oh no, I'm not really upset about this thing that feels very real to me right now. That's not actually what's happening in this moment. I'm really upset because I'm sad because,
Yeah.
you know, something happened to my daughter or something like that, you know.
Hmm.
And now learning what I've learned about soul contracts, I really do feel, you know, seeing my husband, and my daughter, who's also experienced a lot of trauma, to be able to break out of those cycles and watch their, be able to see their souls in a different way, watch them be able to have this like healing ripple effect going out. I really do believe that that was part of a contract that we all had, and my husband and I talk about that quite a bit, just the way that, you know, we all showed up in each other's lives. And
Hmm.
yeah, so I'm sure there's more than that.
Yeah.
And I know there's definitely people who are that for me too, catalysts for me
Hmm.
to shift, not just my husband, but other family members and stuff like that too. And even you. I mean, there's parts of me that I'm like, I know that there's been other interactions before. We've talked about that before.
Hmm.
You know, we're here where we're at right now for a reason.
Yep. You're
And
my sister from another mister.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We are elf siblings. If you've listened to any of our other episodes about our weird little alien dreams, you might want to go look that one up.
My brain went to elves, and I was like,
Oh,
oh, I don't want pointy ears. I don't want pointy ears.
no, not those kind. The alien with the big nose from
Yes, yes.
80s. Yeah,
I don't know. Would I rather have pointy ears or a big giant nose? Which one?
I don't know. I come from a family of large nosed people, so it doesn't bother me at all. I mean, maybe we could not have the warts, but you know, it's fine.
Ah,
Uh,
that's funny.
on that note, though, I mean, this was an interesting, intense, but interesting conversation, and I'm
Hmm.
certainly interested in hearing people's comments about it. I know it can be a struggle sometimes to talk about the things that feel like they're going to be really hard to hear or super triggering, and just reassuring everybody that we are coming from a place of love and genuine curiosity, and we both feel right now our job is to talk about things that people might not feel comfortable talking about with their friends or whatever, maybe helping people gain a little bit of their own curiosity and insight, and hopefully we get an interactive community of a lot of people who are interested in this stuff too.
Yeah. And if you don't want to share the personal deep dive stuff, I want you to put in one of our comment sections if you would rather have pointy ears or a big nose. Would you rather be an elf or an elf?
I bet a lot of people would pick the pointy ears.
Probably.
But that's
I
okay.
think so.
I
Yeah.
can smell a lot of stuff. It's fine.
Oh, I don't know that I want to smell all the
But when
things.
it's good stuff like flowers,
Yeah, or cookies. Or
yeah.
yeah, delicious
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay.
There's lots of good
Well,
stuff too.
everybody think about that.
All right.
We'll see y'all next week.
Sounds good. We'll see ya.
Thanks everybody for listening. If you liked what you heard today, please subscribe and check the show description for the links to the show. We would love to hear your thoughts below on this episode, as well as anything that you'd like us to talk about on future episodes. Remember, everybody, you are unique just the way you are, and that is why they call us Woo.
Mm-hmm.